Well, all right. We are back with part 2 of why you should be self-employed. Why you should be self-employed. And so in part 1, we talked about quite a few things to help you kind of gel up and make your decision of if this is right for you. And in this video, I promised that I would take you back to the 1700s. We're going to do a little bit of a history lesson in this video. So, and this is, I got to tell you guys, if you haven't figured this out already, you probably have, I'm an absolute nerd, okay, when it comes to anything that has to do with business and success. I'm a nerd about it. Or Jesus. I'm a nerd about Jesus too. You know, I've been a Bible teacher since I was 18 years old. So, we are actually studying in the book Personal Career and Financial Security by Richard Maybury, one of my favorite authors, and he goes by the pen name of Uncle Eric. He has a number of books. I'm going to say at least 9 books that he's written. What has he written? 3, 6, 9, 11 books, maybe more by now. And this is, if you really want to understand economics, this guy's an economics teacher. If it's too nerdy for you, don't worry about it, right? You just tune in to Uncle Knolly. I got your back. But if you really want to dig deeper, and you like to read 1 or 2 books a week like I do, then this is a really highly recommended book right here. Now, he's going to go, what we're doing, we're going to go back, and this is, if you've got the book, it's on page 89. He says originally, and I'm going back thousands of years here, there were only 2 models, okay? So you only had 2 business models. Now there actually is a 3rd business model that arose around the 1700s. We're going to look at that here in a second. But so you got Model 1, Model 2, and Model 3, okay? So in 1 was to work for the kings, a warlord, a pharaoh, an emperor, or whatever the local ruler was called, okay? Governments had their legal privilege, or have the legal privilege of taking money via taxation, okay? So the first option, if you wanted to work, okay, you wanted to earn wages, income, was to basically, let's just say, work for the king, okay? Or in other words, we'd say work for the government. That's another way to say that, okay? So whoever was in power, whoever was in play, that was one model. If you wanted to earn income, you go and work for that individual, okay? And by the way, it says, so a person who worked for one of these rulers always had more secure income than those who did not. The higher this person rose in the government, meaning the more closely he worked with the head ruler, the more financially secure he became. So if you worked for the king, and let's say you're way down here, you know, you've got this income, right? But as you work your way up the ranks, the closer you get to the king, the more money you could make. Okay. Now the second model was to own a business. To own a business. Okay, this is the second. So there was only 2 models up until about the 1700s. So when you're talking about all of recorded human history, there only have ever been 2 models, okay, to earn income. And that was to work for the government, work for the king, or own a business. That's it. Okay. Now, look at this. Until the Industrial Revolution began in the 1700s, okay, a business was, in most cases, okay, think about this. A business was, in most cases, can you guess what it was? What was a business in most cases? It's hard to guess, but it was a farm. Okay. So when you think about like the Waltons, or you know, that's not too far back that we're going, but you're thinking about someone that has a farm. Okay, now look at this. Okay, sometimes it would be a store or a workshop of some kind. Okay, so maybe they had like a blacksmith, they had a bakery, a shop, or something like that. Sometimes it was that, but listen to this. Okay, I'm sure at least 90% of the businesses, okay, look at this, 90% of all people that owned a business owned a farm. Okay? So that was the game, guys, until about the 1700s when the Industrial Revolution came around. Okay, now, then he goes into this whole thing about being an entrepreneur, that when times are good, the owner of the business earned more than any of the employees, and when times were bad, the owner was the last person to lose his job. One reason the owner of a business earns more than anyone else in the firm is that he has his own money at stake. He buys the farm or shop and the equipment in it and stands to lose the assets if the business goes broke. So you already know, and that's one of the big reasons why a lot of people don't want to become entrepreneurs. But here's the reality. Remember, we talked about 80% of franchises succeed. Okay, why? Because they have extreme accountability. If you own a Chick-fil-A, the corporate, the company at the top, okay, international, they are not going to let you fail. Right? They're going to be looking over your shoulder. They're going to be watching your numbers. You're going to have extreme accountability, right? And that's why I've created my system. Just like if you were to have your own, say, Chick-fil-A or whatever kind of franchise you owned, I've created my training system in such a way where people cannot fail. It's fail-proof, all right? But let's move on. Let's get into why you should be self-employed, okay? In America, listen to this. Owning a business was by far the surest route to financial security because until the 20th century, the government was very small and did not hire many people. Okay? Most Americans had only two choices: own a private business or be an employee of a private business. Okay? By the 20th century, however, the Industrial Revolution had made businesses so productive that an employee could earn very good wages. Okay, so it became like, man, we can start making money up in here as an employee. Now listen to this. By 1950, the typical American assembly line worker had better medical care, more nutritious food, faster and more comfortable transportation, far more entertainment, and a great many other things that were much superior to anything previous generations had dreamed of. This worker was so well off, he lived better than a medieval king and better than a Roman emperor. That's by the 1950s, guys. The average American worker lived better than a medieval king. Okay, very important to understand this. Okay, imagine the employee could have orange juice in the winter. If his vision was blurry, he could have eyeglasses. He could talk with his friends over distances of hundreds of miles. He could even ride in the comfort down a broad artificial stone road, speeding along at a mile a minute. Okay, this is something that we take for granted. Now, the 20th century employee model produced good results too. So we can call this the Prosperous Employee Model. Okay, so that's the third model that emerged in the Industrial Revolution. It's called the Prosperous Employee Model. Okay, and I know I'm taking a little bit of time with this, but this is very important for people to understand because Scripture says, "My people perish for lack of ignorance," and there are a lot of ignorant people out there that are just going right for this model and not realizing that this model is dead, and it's not even congruent and consistent with most of recorded history. Okay, now let's keep going here. The Prosperous Employee Model worked for perhaps 70 years. Okay, so this model right here, called the Prosperous Employee Model, worked for about 70 years. Okay, and it worked from when? From 1900 to about 1970. Okay, so when you look at, even when you look at how the universities were started, they were started and created, and the curriculums were all based on creating blue collar workers that were needed by the aristocrats. Okay, so this is just history, guys. Go back and look at how colleges and universities were started. They were started so that they can get employees. Okay, so now by 1980, listen to this, the possibility of getting a good job with a solid company, then working one's way up in the company, earning ever higher wages until retiring as a member of the upper middle class or affluent class, had evaporated away. by 1980. Now we're still sending our kids to colleges, and we're still ourselves going to schools pretending that this model still exists, but it's gone. Okay, so says the economics professor. This guy he's wrote 11 books on economics, and he's done a life study of economics. Now, listen to this. Millions who were faithfully following this model found that progress had become very difficult, and many were going backward. Now, this is not a conspiracy theorist. Okay, this is not a guy that's against America. This guy loves our country. Okay, this is a guy that's real. He's just writing real stuff about the reality that most people won't tell you. Now, if you've got the book, which you should have it, chapter 20 talks about another mouth to feed, and that gets into taxation. It talks about the Great Depression in the 1930s and what happened there, how that played out, and then listen to this in chapter. I was going to say verse. I think I'm reading scripture here. In chapter 21, except for a few rare cases, the only people I know who have made this model work are those, or work well, are those without children. Okay, he's still talking about this prosperous employee model. So the three models in play. This was the original model of any model of if you wanted to earn money, you did one of these two, and the prosperous employee model came out around it was real popular from about 1900 to about 1970. Okay, after 1970, it just became a job. You had no security. You could work there for 20 years and get fired on the spot. I mean, it wasn't the same as how it was created. Okay, because this was created for a very specific time period, which is no longer even in play. And this model is no longer a way to financial security. You will, in probably 99% of the cases, you will never be financially free working for someone else. It's just not congruent and consistent with history. It's not congruent and consistent with economics. Okay, so I've got a lot more videos that I'm going to be sharing more and more information with you guys on how to be successful. But in this video, I just wanted to share with you why you should be self-employed. Okay, why? Because it is the model right now, okay, that has stood the test of time. Okay, if you go back to the beginning of time, okay, you had these two models. This model came up and evaporated in terms of its potency, is no longer there. And this, guys, according to an economics professor, one of the leading and one of the brightest that I've found, this is the model that you should be following. Hey, I'm Knolly Williams. I love you. I want to see you successful. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, give it a like, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Make sure you share this with people that you love as well. And join Knolly Success Coaching. It's absolutely free. I retired at age 45, and now I've endeavored myself to see you successful. I started Knolly Success Coaching, absolutely free for real estate agents and small business owners, entrepreneurs. And you can just join at knolly.com. Hey, I love you, and I'll see you on the next one.